In the early 1st century BC, the Roman Republic stood at a precipice. Political corruption, social unrest, and senatorial deadlock had paralyzed the system. The gulf between rich and poor widened. Veterans returned home to poverty. Tribunes clashed with consuls. The once sacred balance of power was now a battleground. Into this chaos stepped Lucius Cornelius Sulla, born to a patrician family but with little wealth. Sulla rose through merit. His brilliance in the Jugurthine War earned him respect, and his cool command during Rome's eastern campaigns marked him as a rising force. But ambition alone would not define Sulla. In a world where political victory increasingly required military muscle, Sulla would show Rome a new way to seize power, one paved with legions and stained with Roman blood. The failure of reformist efforts by the Gracchi brothers decades earlier had left wounds unhealed. Rome's provinces brought wealth, but also widened inequality. Senators enriched themselves, while the citizen soldier base eroded. Political careers became battles for survival. Laws were passed not for principle, but to punish rivals. Rome remained a republic in name, but its institutions were rotting from within. Gaius Marius was Rome's dominant general and 6-time consul by 100 BC. Once comrade in arms, Sulla's and Marius's relationship turned bitter as both sought glory in the east. The spark came in 88 BC when Sulla was appointed to lead Rome's war against Mithridates VI. But Marius, leveraging popular support and tribunes aligned with the Popularis faction, had Sulla's command revoked. This was more than political sabotage. It was a direct assault on both the Senate's authority and Sulla's honor. Sulla, then serving as consul, left the city, not in defeat, but to rally his legions. He returned with his army, an act without precedent. The legions that had won Rome's wars now marched on their own capital. Sulla sieged the Forum, declared Marius and his allies enemies of the state, and restored his military command. For the first time in Roman history, a political dispute had been resolved, not with votes, but with veterans. The taboo of crossing the Pomeridium under arms had been broken. Rome would never be the same. Marius, a novus homo, or new man, had risen without noble ancestry. His reforms had opened military ranks to the landless poor, linking soldiers' loyalty not to the state, but to their generals. This shift changed everything. Generals now had private armies bound by personal reward, not public duty. It was a change Sulla witnessed firsthand and would later exploit himself. Sulla's first march on Rome was both bold and terrifying. His soldiers stormed the capital with ruthless efficiency. Political enemies were slain or exiled. Marius fled to North Africa, barely escaping with his life. After securing Rome, Sulla left to fight Mithridates. The message was clear. The Republic's laws no longer guaranteed safety. Force had now triumphed over legality. Even after leaving for the east, Sulla remained a looming threat to his enemies. His precedent lingered like a storm cloud. And while Sulla fought in Asia, the popularis regrouped. Marius returned in 87 BC, aged and vengeful. He and Lucius Cornelius Sulla took Rome in a bloodbath, executing senators and pro-Sullan officials. Marius died shortly after, early in his 7th consulship, but Sulla ruled in his stead. While Sulla concluded peace in the east and prepared to return, he knew it would not be to reclaim office. He would return as a conqueror, with unfinished business and vengeance to extract. The psychological shock of legionaries entering the city streets reverberated throughout Italy. Some saw Sulla as a traitor, others as a savior. The Senate, complicit in its own paralysis, offered little resistance. Power in Rome no longer rested on law, but on loyalty. Loyalty that could be bought with land, coin, and vengeance. Sulla's eastern campaign was ruthless and brilliant. He crushed Mithridates' forces in Greece and Asia Minor, restored Roman dominance, and extracted immense wealth to fund his return. His troops, hardened and loyal, followed him back to Italy in 83 BC. There he faced a patchwork of opposition. Cinna was dead, but the Marian faction still held Rome. Sulla's war for the Republic became a second civil war. Cities fell, armies surrendered or were annihilated. He advanced north, securing allies like Pompey and Crassus along the way. In 82 BC, he defeated the Marian forces at the Battle of the Colline Gates, one of the bloodiest confrontations ever fought near Rome's walls. When he entered Rome again, it was not as consul, it was as dictator. Sulla's victories in the east were not merely military triumphs. They symbolized a restoration of Roman prestige. He punished rebellious Greek cities and forged treaties that refilled Rome's coffers. He also demonstrated Roman might to future Eastern rulers, but the war hardened Sulla into someone different, more calculating, more ruthless, and utterly convinced of his destiny. Sulla revived the dictatorship, a position not held in over a century, and claimed it not for 6 months, but for an indefinite term. He promised restoration, but ruled through terror. The proscriptions began, lists of enemies condemned without trial, properties were seized, sons and grandsons of the condemned barred from office, and bounties paid for murder. It was legalized execution on a scale Rome had never seen. Dozens of senators and thousands of equestrians died, with estimates varying. Rome's elites either aligned with Sulla or perished. Yet in Sulla's mind, this was justice, not revenge. He believed that only through purging corruption and rebellion could the Republic be saved. The cost was staggering, but Sulla saw himself not as a tyrant, but as a surgeon, cutting deep to heal the body of Rome. The proscriptions created a culture of fear unlike any Rome had known. Children grew up learning not about virtue, but silence. Wills were altered under duress. Some men killed rivals just to claim their estates. Even those not targeted watched friends vanish overnight. Rome had become a city where survival depended on the shifting winds of political favor and the whims of a single man. With his enemies dead or silenced, Sulla set about reshaping the Republic. He doubled the Senate's size, filled it with loyalists, and stripped the tribunes of their legislative power. He reasserted senatorial control over the courts. sharply curtailed populist grain subsidies, and restructured provincial commands. His reforms aimed to entrench the optimates and prevent future uprisings, but in doing so, he hollowed out the checks that had once balanced Roman politics. The tribunes, once protectors of the people, were muzzled. Popular assemblies, like the Comitia Tributa, were stripped of legislative power. The Senate, though enlarged, had become obedient. Sulla claimed he was restoring the old republic. In truth, he built a new one where tradition was enforced by fear, and loyalty to the state meant loyalty to the dictator. Sulla's legal reforms were detailed and sweeping. He rewrote the cursus honorum, the sequence of public offices, restricting fast rises in power. He set age limits, staggered elections, and enforced senatorial oversight on provincial governors. But these reforms assumed a level of civic virtue that no longer existed. Without consensus, structure became constraint. Resentment brewed beneath every imposed safeguard. Then, in a shocking act of restraint, Sulla resigned. In 79 BC, declaring his mission complete, he laid down his powers and retired to private life in Campania. There, surrounded by books and banquets, he wrote his memoirs and faded into history. He died the following year, likely from illness. Rome stood stunned. A man who had seized power absolutely had walked away voluntarily. But the scars of his rule remained. Families destroyed, precedents set, the normalization of civil war. Though many of Sulla's laws were repealed within a decade, his methods, military seizure of power, political purges, and state-sanctioned terror left a permanent imprint on Roman politics. In retirement, Sulla remained a force of legend. Visitors from Rome came to consult him. Even in leisure, he wrote his memoirs, shaping the narrative of his life. He saw himself not as a despot, but as Rome's final guardian, and perhaps he was, for in breaking the Republic to save it, he taught future rulers one endearing lesson, that legitimacy can be claimed not through tradition, but through victory. Sulla saw himself as Rome's savior, and perhaps he was. Briefly, he ended a chaotic era and imposed structure, but in doing so, he made the Republic more fragile, not less. He proved that armies could settle political power, that laws bent under pressure, that loyalty to Rome meant submission to power. He claimed he broke the system to save it. What he truly did was teach Rome how to fall. Caesar, Pompey, Crassus, and eventually Augustus would all learn from his example. March on Rome, eliminate rivals, justify everything in the name of stability. The Republic did not die with Sulla, but it learned to accept death. And in that, Sulla's legacy echoes not in peace, but in precedent. The Republic was saved only so it could be destroyed more efficiently. Sulla's example shattered illusions. The Republic's failure was not caused by one man, but revealed by him. When citizens cheered the strong man, when laws bend under fear, when soldiers choose generals over statesmen, liberty falters. Rome did not die with Sulla. It staggered on, wounded, reshaped, but its soul, the belief in shared rule and civic virtue, never fully recovered. And in that wound, the empire took root.